Hello everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. That's how YouTube keeps sending you more chilling stories like this. And now, let the night begin with Story 1. The locks he changed before he died. The locksmith kept apologizing, but I could tell he thought I was lying. "Sir, these are commercial-grade deadbolts," he said, kneeling by my uncle's front door with his drill. "The kind you see on laboratories, on evidence rooms." I didn't correct him. Someone really didn't want anything getting out. Let me back up. I inherited my uncle's house 3 months after his funeral. Uncle Gary had been a mechanical engineer, never married, lived alone in a modest 2-story colonial about 40 minutes outside Portland. We weren't particularly close. He was my father's brother, the quiet one at family gatherings who always left early. But apparently he'd been planning to leave me the house for years. The estate lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Brennan, handed me a key ring with 7 keys during our first meeting. "The property is paid off," she said. "Utilities are current. He kept excellent records." I drove out there on a Saturday in late September, planning to do a walkthrough and start figuring out what to keep, what to donate, what to sell. The house looked exactly as I remembered from the funeral reception 3 months earlier. Pale yellow siding, black shutters, maple trees dropping leaves across the lawn. The neighborhood was quiet. Older homes with well-maintained yards, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors but minded their own business. I tried the front door first. The key slid into the lock but wouldn't turn. I assumed I had the wrong key, tried another. Same problem. I went around to the back door, same issue. The side door leading into the garage, the basement bulkhead. Every single lock had been changed and none of my keys worked. I called Ms. Brennan. "That's impossible," she said. "Those keys came directly from his safe deposit box." "Well, they don't work." There was a pause. "Gary died on August 19th. I heard papers shuffling. The locksmith invoice. He had someone come out on August 4th, 2 weeks before his death." "I don't know. But legally, it's your property. You have a right to enter." I didn't want to break a window, but the basement window well was half covered with leaves and mostly hidden from the street. I used a tire iron from my car to pop it open, then lowered myself feet first into the darkness, landing on top of what felt like a washing machine. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floors, exposed beams, utility shelves lined with paint cans and old tools, but it was unusually clean, almost sterile. No dust, no cobwebs, no musty smell, just the hum of the furnace and a chemical tang I couldn't identify. I found the stairs and went up into the main house. The first floor looked normal. Lived in, but tidy, the furniture I remembered from childhood visits. The kitchen had clean dishes in the drainer. Mail sorted on the counter. Everything looked like someone had just stepped out and would be back any moment. But there were things that didn't make sense. Every interior door had a new lock installed. Bedroom doors, bathroom doors, even the closets. Not normal privacy locks, but actual deadbolts with keys. And on several doors there were scratch marks near the handles, deep gouges in the wood that looked almost like claw marks, but too deliberate. Too purposeful. I climbed the stairs to the second floor. 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. My uncle's room was at the end of the hall. Door closed. I tried the handle, locked of course, but this lock was different. This one had been reinforced with a metal plate, and there was a sliding bolt on the outside, the kind you'd use to lock someone in. Or something. I should have left then, called Ms. Brennan, hired professionals, walked away. But I'd driven 40 minutes and I was already inside, and I told myself I was being ridiculous. He was an engineer, maybe he was paranoid about break-ins, maybe he had valuable equipment. I used the tire iron to force the bedroom door. The room was empty, completely empty, no furniture, no belongings, nothing. The walls had been painted a stark white recently. I could still smell the paint, but there were marks on the floor, perfect rectangles where furniture had been. And when I looked closer, I saw the carpet had been bleached in spots. Crude attempts to remove stains that had only made them more visible, brown stains, lots of them. Sarah was my aunt, his sister, who died in a car accident 20 years ago. My hands were shaking as I backed out of the room. I went through the rest of the house methodically, photographing everything. Every room showed signs of my uncle's deteriorating mental state. Notes taped to walls, warnings scrawled in margins of books, furniture pushed against doors. In the kitchen, I found a calendar. The last 2 weeks of his life were marked with the same notation, written and rewritten. Stay in basement. The living room had more evidence. He'd been sleeping on the couch, I realized. There was a pillow, a blanket, and on the coffee table a stack of notebooks filled with his handwriting. I sat down and started reading. The entries started normally enough. Daily routines, grocery lists, work notes. But about 6 months before his death, the tone changed. Heard it again last night. 3rd floor. A week later, footsteps in the attic, checked, nothing there. Then found the door behind the bedroom closet, wasn't there before. His handwriting got worse as the entries progressed, harder to read, more frantic. It showed me Sarah today, standing in the backyard, but Sarah is dead. I know Sarah is dead. I was at her funeral. Changed the locks, can't let anyone in, can't let it out. If I die, maybe it dies too. The last entry was dated August 18th, the day before he died. I understand now. It's not in the house, it is the house. It's been growing, learning. It knows I'm dying, heart's barely working, can feel it. Once I'm gone, it'll need someone else. Someone with my blood. It keeps asking about my nephew. Keeps saying his name the way I say it. I changed the locks, but I don't think that matters. If you're reading this, Tyler, I'm sorry. I tried to protect you. Don't use the front door. I dropped the notebook. My uncle had died of a heart attack. That's what they told us. Found in his basement, crumpled at the bottom of the stairs like he'd fallen. But now I was wondering if he'd been running from something, or running toward the only place he felt safe. I looked at the front door from where I sat. It was just a door, solid wood, brass handle, the new commercial-grade deadbolt the locksmith had been drilling earlier. But as I stared at it, I noticed something I'd missed. There were scratches on the inside of the door, long, deep scratches like someone had been trying to claw their way out. My phone rang and I nearly screamed. It was Ms. Brennan. Tyler, I found something in Gary's papers, a letter. He wrote it a week before he died, left it with his will. I'm reading it now, and I think you need to leave that house. He knew he was dying. He knew his heart couldn't take much more. He said the house has been waiting for someone to inherit it, someone with family blood, and he tried to make sure that couldn't happen. But legally, he couldn't destroy the property or donate it outside the family without a lengthy process he didn't have time for. Tyler, he says, if you've entered the house, you need to leave immediately and never go back. I stood up, backing toward the basement door. He doesn't explain. Upstairs, something moved. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crossing the empty bedroom. The bedroom I'd just been inside. The bedroom that was locked from the outside. Ms. Brennan's voice was tinny and distant. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. A woman's voice, calling from upstairs. Familiar, impossible. My mother's voice. But my mother lived in Florida and hadn't been in this house in years. I ran for the basement stairs, nearly fell down them, scrambled across the concrete floor toward the window I'd come in through. Behind me, I heard the basement door open, heard footsteps on the stairs, too many footsteps, like several people walking in perfect synchronization. Tyler, don't leave yet. I hauled myself up through the window, cutting my hands on the broken glass, not caring. I ran to my car, started it with shaking hands, and drove. I didn't stop until I was back in Portland, until I was in my apartment with every light on and the door locked. Ms. Brennan called me back an hour later. I left. What do I do? It's too late. You entered the property. Legally, it's yours now, but Gary left instructions. If you chose to accept the inheritance, there's money in an account, substantial money, to pay for very specific contractors. She paused. I have names, phone numbers. He never says explicitly, but Tyler, he also left something else. Security camera footage from the house dated 2 days before he died. He left instructions that you should watch it before you decide what to do with the property. I watched the footage that night. It was from a camera in the basement pointed at the stairs. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. In the video, my uncle appeared, backing down the stairs, his face gray with terror. He was staring at something at the top of the stairs, something the camera couldn't see. "Please," he said to the empty air. "Please, I know you're not Sarah." The basement lights flickered, and then something moved at the top of the stairs. I still can't describe it properly. It wasn't a shadow exactly. It was more like the house itself had learned to move, like the walls had decided to peel away and reshape themselves into something that could walk, could speak, could wear the face of someone you loved. My uncle clutched his chest, staggered backward. The thing descended the stairs and the footage cut to static. I called the number Ms. Brennan sent me. A man answered, voice tired but professional. "How did you? Your uncle was a client. We've been waiting for your call. Don't go back there. Not yet. We'll handle the initial assessment, make sure it hasn't breached the property line. But you need to understand something. That house is yours now, legally and otherwise. It knows your name. It knows your face. It will call you in voices you recognize." "We don't know. Your uncle had theories. Something that came with the land, maybe, or something that was built into the foundation. Houses have memories, Mr. Patterson." That was 4 months ago. The containment specialists went in, did what they do. They sealed the house, reinforced whatever my uncle had built, installed systems I don't understand. They send me monthly reports, all clear, no breaches, the property is contained, but I still get phone calls sometimes, usually late at night. The caller ID shows my uncle's old landline. I never answer, but the voicemails it leaves are always the same. My own voice, saying my own name, asking myself to please come home. The house is still legally mine. I pay the property taxes, the containment fees, the monitoring service. Ms. Brennan says I could sell it, but we'd have to disclose everything, and who would buy it? Who could? Sometimes I drive out there, park on the street, look at it from a distance. It looks so normal. Yellow siding, black shutters, maple trees, just a house. But I never use the front door. I never will. Because my uncle was right. It's not a door anymore. It's a mouth. And it's been waiting to learn my name for a very, very long time. Story 2. The tenant in the attic. I found the rent checks before I ever heard her voice. 7 of them slipped under my bedroom door in the week after I moved into my grandmother's house. Each made out for $0.00. Each dated exactly 20 years in the past. Each signed in perfect cursive. Eleanor Ashby. The first morning I found one, I assumed it was a joke from the estate settlement team. Some weird paperwork that had gotten mixed up. But they kept appearing. Every morning, always under my door, even though I'd started sleeping with a chair wedged against it just to test if someone was actually sliding them through while I slept. The chair never moved. The checks still appeared. My grandmother's house was a 3-story Victorian in Salem, Massachusetts, the kind of place that looked haunted even in broad daylight. She'd lived there alone for 43 years, ever since my grandfather died, and I'd visited exactly twice in my life. Both times as a child, both times left with the distinct impression that the house didn't want me there. When she died at 96, I was shocked to learn she'd left it to me. We hadn't spoken in over a decade, but her lawyer, An ancient man named Mr. Carmichael assured me it was legitimate. "There is one unusual clause," he said during our meeting, adjusting his glasses to read from the will. "There is a tenant residing in the attic apartment. Per your grandmother's wishes, she is to remain rent-free with full access to the third floor until such time as she voluntarily chooses to vacate. You cannot evict her. You cannot charge her rent. The arrangement predates my tenure as her attorney," Mr. Carmichael said carefully. "It was established in 1987, according to the original lease agreement, which remains in effect. The tenant's name is Eleanor Ashby. Can I at least meet her? That would be entirely up to Miss Ashby." The house was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, creaking floors, rooms that always felt 10 degrees colder than they should. My grandmother had been a meticulous housekeeper, and everything was clean, organized, dated. Furniture from the 1970s, wallpaper from the 1960s. Curtains that might have been fashionable when Eisenhower was president. The second floor, where I'd set up my bedroom, was actually pleasant once I opened the windows and let some air in. But there was a door at the end of the hallway, the one leading up to the third floor, and it was locked. Not just locked, sealed with a padlock that looked newer than anything else in the house. I found keys in my grandmother's desk, dozens of them on different rings, labeled with masking tape in her shaky handwriting. I unlocked the padlock and opened the door. The stairs were steep, narrow, the kind that would have been servant stairs in the house's original era. They were swept clean, not a speck of dust. At the top was another door, this one unlocked, leading into what had clearly been converted into a small apartment. I stood in the doorway and called out, "Hello, Miss Ashby, I'm Lauren. I inherited the house." No response. The apartment was larger than I'd expected. A sitting room, a kitchenette, 2 doors that presumably led to a bedroom and bathroom. It was furnished, decorated, lived in. A teacup sat on the coffee table, still half full. A book lay open on the armchair, reading glasses resting on top. The kitchen had food in the cupboards, dishes in the drainer, but something was wrong with the apartment. It took me a moment to identify what. Everything was old, not antique old, not vintage. Old in the sense that nothing in the apartment appeared to be from this century or even the last few decades. The television was a boxy thing from the 1980s. The telephone was rotary. The calendar on the wall showed December 1987. The book on the chair was a hardcover, no dust jacket, and when I picked it up, the spine cracked like it hadn't been opened in years. But it was open. Someone had been reading it. I called again. "I don't mean to intrude." One of the interior doors, the bedroom I assumed, was slightly ajar. I approached it slowly, that childhood feeling of dread creeping back. The same feeling I'd had visiting this house as a little girl. I pushed the door open. The bedroom was empty. Bed made with military precision, curtains drawn, everything in its place. But on the nightstand was a framed photograph, and when I saw it, my blood went cold. It was my grandmother, young, maybe in her 50s, standing in front of this house with her arm around another woman. Blonde, smiling, probably in her mid-30s. The year the lease agreement was signed, I took out my phone and called Mr. Carmichael. I don't have that information readily available, because if she signed a lease in 1987, she'd have to be at least in her 70s by now. There's no one here, Mr. Carmichael. The apartment looks like someone just stepped out, but everything in it is from the 1980s. There was a long silence. Your grandmother left very specific instructions about that apartment, Lauren. You were not to disturb it. You said I couldn't evict her or charge her rent. No, I said it would be up to Miss Ashby. Your grandmother's notes were more explicit. Under no circumstances are you to go up to the third floor. Under no circumstances are you to attempt to see her. Your grandmother described them in her letters to me. She said you would find them. She said you must accept them no matter what they say, no matter how they arrive. What agreement! But Mr. Carmichael had already hung up. I went back downstairs, locked the attic door, and tried to forget about it. But that night, I heard footsteps above my bedroom. Slow, measured footsteps pacing back and forth. The sound of someone walking the same path over and over. I put in earplugs and told myself it was old house settling, pipes expanding, any rational explanation. The next morning, there was another rent check under my door. This one was dated January 15th, 1988. The signature was the same perfect cursive. I started researching. Salem Public Records, Historical Society, newspaper archives. Eleanor Ashby wasn't a common name, and I found her surprisingly easily. She'd died in December of 1987. Car accident just 2 weeks before Christmas. According to her obituary, she'd been 37 years old. A teacher at the local elementary school, survived by no immediate family. The funeral had been held at St. Patrick's Church, and among the attendees listed was my grandmother, Margaret Holloway. They'd been friends, close friends from what I could piece together. My grandmother had never remarried after my grandfather died, had lived alone in this huge house, and Eleanor had apparently been her companion, her friend, maybe more than that. I found photographs in my grandmother's albums, the two of them at dinner parties on day trips, always together. And then Eleanor died. And 2 weeks later, according to a lease agreement dated January 1st, 1988, Eleanor Ashby moved into the attic apartment rent-free in perpetuity. I didn't go back up to the attic for 3 weeks, but the footsteps continued every night and the rent checks kept appearing, counting forward through 1988, one day at a time. Then one night I heard something different. Not footsteps, crying. Someone in the attic was crying, soft and broken, the sound of absolute grief. I couldn't stand it anymore. I unlocked the attic door and climbed the stairs. "Eleanor! Eleanor, I know you're up here! I know what happened!" The crying stopped. I pushed open the apartment door. The sitting room was exactly as I'd left it. Teacup, book, reading glasses. But now there was something else. A photograph on the mantel that hadn't been there before. It was the same photo I'd seen in the bedroom. My grandmother and Eleanor in 1987. The bedroom door, which I'd left open, was now closed, and as I stood there I heard the crying again, coming from behind it, muffled, broken. I approached the door, put my hand on the knob, every instinct screaming at me not to open it. "Eleanor, if you want to leave, you can leave. The lease doesn't matter. I release you from it." The crying intensified, and then a voice, hoarse, exhausted, ancient. "I can't. My grandmother is dead, Eleanor. She's gone." The voice was right behind the door now. "She's here. She's always here. She keeps me so she won't be alone. Let me go. Please, I've been here so long." I opened the door. The bedroom was empty, but it was freezing, so cold I could see my breath. I ran back downstairs, grabbed my phone, called Mr. Carmichael. It went to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Finally, a text came through. "Stop calling. You were warned." I went back upstairs, but this time I brought something from my grandmother's desk. A small leather journal I'd found hidden in a locked drawer. I'd only glanced at it before, dismissed it as senile rambling. Now I read it carefully. My grandmother's handwriting, dated entries spanning decades. Most of it was mundane, shopping lists, appointment reminders. But there were other entries scattered throughout that made my hands shake. "Eleanor came to me again last night. She asked me to let her rest. I told her no, I can't be alone again. The house knows her now. As long as the lease exists, as long as someone accepts the rent, she can't leave. She's bound here. She's getting weaker. Sometimes I can barely hear her, but I've reinforced the binding. New lease agreement every year, signed in my blood and hers. She'll stay." The last entry was dated 3 days before my grandmother died. "I'm dying, finally. But I've prepared everything. Lauren will inherit. Lauren will continue the agreement. Eleanor will have a new keeper. I felt sick. My grandmother hadn't just kept Eleanor here out of grief or loneliness. She'd trapped her, bound her somehow with whatever dark thing she'd done when she created that lease, and now I was part of it. I went back up to the attic, to the bedroom door. Eleanor, I'm going to find a way to break this. The lease, the voice whispered. She kept the original. Find it. I tore the house apart, every drawer, every box, every hidden compartment. It took me 6 hours, but I finally found it. In the basement, in a locked metal box wrapped in plastic and preserved like some precious artifact. The lease agreement dated January 1st, 1988. Handwritten, signed by both my grandmother and Eleanor Ashby. But the signatures were strange, dark, not quite the right color for ink. Blood. She'd signed it in blood. I took it outside into the backyard, as far from the house as I could get. I put it in my grandmother's old metal trash can and set it on fire. The paper burned slowly, reluctantly, and as it burned, I heard screaming from inside the house. Not Eleanor's voice, my grandmother's voice, shrieking in rage and despair. The fire consumed the lease completely. The screaming stopped. I went back inside, climbed the stairs to the attic. The apartment door was open, and the apartment was different now. Dust everywhere, cobwebs, furniture rotting, everything decayed like it had been abandoned for decades. On the bed, arranged carefully, was a single piece of paper. I never found another rent check after that. The footsteps stopped. The attic fell silent. I still live in my grandmother's house. I've renovated most of it, made it my own, tried to let light into all the dark corners she'd kept sealed. But I never go into the attic anymore. I keep that door locked, not because I'm afraid of what I'll find, but because I know the apartment is empty now. Eleanor is finally gone, finally free. Sometimes, though, late at night, I think I hear footsteps on the 3rd floor. Just for a moment. Like someone walking one last patrol, making sure the house is safe, making sure no one else gets trapped the way she was. I inherited a house, but I also inherited my grandmother's sins, and I learned that some inheritances come with debts we never agreed to pay. Debts written in blood, signed in grief, and enforced by the terrible things lonely people will do to avoid being alone. Story 3. What my aunt kept in the basement freezer. The estate lawyer mentioned the freezer twice during our meeting. Your aunt specified in her final requests that the basement freezer should be cleaned out within 30 days of her passing. Ms. Chen said, sliding a paper across the desk. That should have been my first warning. Why would someone leave money specifically for freezer disposal? Aunt Carol had been a surgical nurse for 40 years before retiring. She'd never married, no kids, lived alone in a small ranch house in suburban Connecticut. We'd been close when I was younger, but as I got older, I saw her less. She became more private, more particular about visits. The last time I'd been to her house was probably 6 years ago for a strained Thanksgiving dinner where she'd spent most of the meal watching the basement door like she expected something to walk through it. She'd died in hospice, pancreatic cancer, and I was her only living relative. The house was mine now, along with everything in it. I drove up on a Saturday in October, planning to spend the weekend doing an initial walkthrough. The house was exactly as I remembered, neat, clean, dated, but well maintained. Aunt Carol had been meticulous about everything. Every surface was dust-free, every item in its designated place. The basement door was in the kitchen, and it was the only door in the house with a lock, a keypad lock, the kind you'd see on a secure office. I found the code in her papers, 7734, which spelled hell upside down on a calculator. That should have been my second warning. The basement was finished, not creepy at all. Carpeted floor, painted walls, overhead lighting. It was set up like a storage room with metal shelving units holding neatly labeled plastic bins. Christmas decorations, tax documents, medical textbooks from her nursing career, and in the far corner, humming quietly, a large chest freezer. Industrial size, the kind you'd see in a restaurant. On top of it was a piece of paper laminated with a handwritten note in my aunt's precise cursive. "Jordan, I'm sorry you have to deal with this. Please dispose of everything carefully. Wear gloves. Do not try to identify, just dispose. The bags are labeled by date. Start with the oldest if you must look, but I'm begging you not to. Some questions are better left unanswered. Aunt Carol." I stood there for a long time staring at that note. The freezer was locked with a padlock. The key was taped to the bottom of the note. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. Inside, the freezer was organized with the same meticulous care as everything else in my aunt's life. Plastic storage bags, the heavy-duty freezer kind, each labeled with a date and a number. They were arranged chronologically, the oldest at the bottom. I pulled out the top bag. My aunt had died in September 2023. This was from the month before. Through the frosted plastic, I could see something dark, irregular. I almost put it back, almost followed her instructions to just throw everything away without looking, but I didn't. I opened the bag. Inside was a human finger, an index finger severed cleanly at the base, preserved in the freezing temperature. The nail was painted blue. I dropped it, stepped back. My mind was racing through explanations. She was a surgical nurse. Maybe these were medical specimens, educational materials, but then why keep them at home? Why the secrecy? Why the desperate note begging me not to look? I pulled out another bag. A toe this time, then another bag. Several teeth removed with professional precision. I pulled out more bags, working backward through the dates. The numbers went down. Number 35, number 31, number 27. Each bag contained small body parts, carefully preserved. Fingers, toes, teeth, sometimes an ear. Once a piece of what I think was tattooed skin, the ink still visible. The dates went back years. I found bags from 2022, 2021, 2020. The further back I went, the more I found. The deepest bags at the very bottom were dated from 2008. 15 years, 47 bags, 47 numbers. I pulled out the oldest bag with shaking hands. Inside was a finger, like the first one I'd found, but this one had a ring still on it. A man's wedding band, plain gold with an inscription too small to read through the plastic. I sat on the basement floor, surrounded by 15 years of body parts my aunt had collected and preserved, and tried to make sense of it. She'd been a surgical nurse. She would have had access to operating rooms, medical waste, disposal protocols. She would have known how to remove tissue without leaving obvious traces. She would have known how to store biological material. But why? I went back upstairs and tore through her papers, her files, looking for anything that would explain this. I found her work history. She'd worked at 4 different hospitals over her career, moving every few years. I found her medical license, her certifications, her spotless record, and I found a locked filing cabinet in her bedroom closet. Inside were newspaper clippings, dozens of them, going back to 2008, missing persons cases, unsolved disappearances, each article carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve, organized by date. The first article was from February 2008. A man named Richard Cornwall had disappeared after his shift at a manufacturing plant. Left his car in the parking lot, never made it home. Police investigated, found nothing. No body, no leads. He was 43 years old, married, 2 kids. The article included a photo. Richard Cornwall was wearing a wedding ring. I compared the date to the freezer bags. February 2008, number 1. I pulled out another article, July 2008, A woman named Patricia Diaz, 51, disappeared while hiking alone. They found her car at the trailhead, never found her. July 2008, number 2. The second bag in the freezer. I went through all of them. 47 newspaper articles, 47 missing persons, 47 bags. My aunt had taken something from each of them. But the articles didn't explain how she'd gotten access to the bodies. These people hadn't died in hospitals. They'd disappeared, presumed dead, never found, except my aunt had found them. Or she'd been there when they died. I called Ms. Chen, the estate lawyer. Did my aunt have any storage units? No, just the house. Was she ever investigated for anything? Not that I'm aware of. I didn't know how to explain. The freezer, there are things in it. Ms. Chen's voice was sharp. Your aunt left a sealed letter with me. She said if you found something concerning, I should give this to you before you went to the authorities. I couldn't wait, but I didn't call the police that night either. Instead, I went back to the newspaper articles and started researching. Richard Cornwall, the first case. I found more details in online archives. He'd been having an affair. His mistress told police they'd planned to meet the night he disappeared, but he never showed up. The investigation looked at the wife, the mistress, his business partners. Nothing ever stuck. But his wife worked at the same hospital as my aunt. I found an old hospital newsletter with a photo. Staff Appreciation Day, 2007. My aunt standing next to a woman identified as Susan Cornwall. Billing department. Patricia Diaz, the second case. She'd been an OR nurse at a different hospital, the same hospital where my aunt worked in 2008. I went through more cases. Not all of them had obvious connections, but enough did. They'd worked at the same hospitals, they'd been patients, they'd been colleagues, they'd known my aunt. On Monday, I met with Ms. Chen. She handed me a thick envelope sealed with wax, my name written on it in my aunt's handwriting. Inside was a letter. Jordan, if you're reading this, you've looked in the freezer. I asked you not to, but I knew you would. We're similar that way, you and I. We need to understand things. I need you to know I never killed anyone. I want to be absolutely clear about that. Every person represented in that freezer died because of their own choices, their own actions, their own failings. I simply witnessed. And I took something small, something that wouldn't be missed, so I could remember. I started in 2008. Richard Cornwall had been beating his wife, Susan, a friend of mine from work, for years. She came to me one night, face swollen, ribs cracked. I helped her. We planned it carefully. He disappeared. She was free. When they found his car, I went back to the scene alone. I took his wedding ring finger before the decay made it impossible. I didn't plan to do it again, but then I met Patricia. She was overdosing patients, stealing fentanyl, covering her tracks. I saw her do it. I reported her, but the hospital buried it. Didn't want the liability, so I took care of it myself. Made it look like a hiking accident. Over 15 years, I found 47 people who hurt others, who destroyed lives, who deserved what happened to them. I removed them. Carefully. Surgically. No mess, no obvious crime, just people disappearing who wouldn't be mourned for the right reasons. The freezer is my record, my reminder that I helped people even if I did it in the darkest way possible. I never wanted you to know, but if you found this, you have to decide what to do with it. Turn me in posthumously and help solve 47 cases. Or dispose of the evidence and let sleeping dogs lie. I've left you money either way. For lawyers if you turn me in, for disposal services if you don't. I was a monster, Jordan. But I was a monster who only killed other monsters. Make of that what you will. I love you. I'm sorry. Carol. I sat in my car outside the lawyer's office and cried. Not because I was horrified, though I was, but because I believed her. Every article I'd researched had that undercurrent. The abusive husband, the drug-stealing nurse, the predator, the embezzler, the abuser. My aunt had been a serial killer who only killed killers. I took 3 days to decide. I didn't sleep much. I kept going back to the basement, looking at those bags, thinking about the 47 people they represented, thinking about the people my aunt had saved by removing them. In the end, I made a choice I'm still not sure was right. I rented an industrial incinerator, the kind used for medical waste. I burned everything, the bags, the contents, the newspaper clippings, the letter. I deep cleaned the freezer and sold it online. I hired a company to gut the basement and refinish it, removing every trace of what had been there. I never called the police. 47 cases will remain unsolved. 47 families will never have closure. And I carry that weight now, the same way my aunt carried it for 15 years. I sold her house after 6 months. I couldn't live there. Couldn't walk past that basement door without thinking about what I'd destroyed, what I'd hidden. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Sometimes I think about Susan Cornwall, who got to live free because my aunt killed her abuser. Sometimes I think about the patients who survived because my aunt killed Patricia Diaz. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the same thing lives in me that lived in Aunt Carol. That capacity to decide who deserves to exist and who doesn't. That surgical precision in solving problems other people are too afraid to solve. I hope not. But I kept one thing from that freezer hidden in my own safe place. Bag number 1, Richard Cornwall's finger, with that wedding ring still on it, just in case I ever meet someone who reminds me of him. Just in case I need to remember that sometimes monsters are the only ones brave enough to fight other monsters. I know that makes me complicit. Maybe it makes me worse than my aunt because she at least had the courage to act while I only had the cowardice to hide her secrets. But I think about those 47 people every day, and I sleep better knowing they're gone. Story 4. The neighbors who knew my dead uncle better than I did. The casseroles started arriving before I'd even finished unloading the moving truck. "You must be Cameron," the woman said, holding a glass dish covered in foil. She was maybe 60, dressed like she was heading to church, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Diane from 3 doors down. I'm so sorry about Robert. He was such a lovely man. You look just like him, you know." I didn't look anything like my uncle. He'd been short and heavy with thinning gray hair. I'm tall, dark-haired, 32 years old, but I thanked her for the casserole and went back to unpacking. The next neighbor appeared 20 minutes later. A man this time, mid-50s, carrying a potted plant. "For the front step," he said. "Robert always kept a plant there. Geraniums in summer, mums in fall. I'm Douglas, next door. If you need anything at all, just knock." "That's very kind. I actually didn't know my uncle well." Douglas's smile faltered. "Oh, that's surprising. He talked about you constantly, showed us pictures. I'd met my uncle exactly 3 times in my life. We'd exchanged maybe 10 words total, but I just nodded and accepted the plant. By the end of the first day, I'd met 7 neighbors. All of them brought food, all of them mentioned how much I looked like Robert, how I had his mannerisms, his walk, his smile. All of them seemed to know details about my life that I'd never told my uncle because I'd never had the chance. That night, I sat in my uncle's kitchen, my kitchen now, and looked through the paperwork from the estate. Robert had died suddenly. A brain aneurysm collapsed in his driveway. He'd been 58, lived alone, no wife or kids. I was his only living relative, which was the only reason I'd inherited this modest house in suburban Ohio. The house itself was fine, clean, outdated, but livable. The neighbors were friendly, if a little intense. Everything should have felt normal, but it didn't. The second day, Diane came back. "I brought you Robert's mail," she said, handing me a stack of envelopes. "It was still being delivered to his mailbox, and I thought you might need it." "Oh, we all do. We all have keys to each other's houses, too. That's just how it is on Maple Street." She paused at the door. "What time do you usually take your evening walk?" Robert always walked at 7:30. Her face fell like I'd told her someone died. "Oh, well, maybe you'll start. It's such a lovely neighborhood for walking." Robert loved it. He'd go the same route every night, down to the corner, left on Oak, around the park, back home. Never varied. After she left, I tried to shake off the weird feeling. So the neighbors were a little overfamiliar. That was small-town life, right? People being neighborly, maybe coming on too strong because they missed my uncle. But then I found the photos. They were in a drawer in my uncle's desk, dozens of them, printed on regular paper, color photos that looked like they'd been taken from a distance. Me walking to my car, me at the grocery store, me sitting in my apartment window. Photos from the last 6 months tracking my movements, my routines. My uncle had been stalking me, or someone had been stalking me and sending the photos to him. I found a journal in the same drawer. My uncle's handwriting, meticulous entries going back 2 years. Cameron leaves for work at 7:15 a.m. weekdays, takes the same route, left on Benson, right on Highway 34, stops at the coffee shop on Tuesdays and Thursdays, orders a large black coffee, no sugar. He documented everything, my schedule, my habits, my friends' names, my favorite restaurants. He'd been learning me, studying me, like I was a test he needed to pass. And the journal had notes in the margins, written by different people in different handwriting. Good detail on the coffee shop. Cameron has a tell when he's nervous, touches his left ear. Robert, you never did that. Walking posture still off. Robert walked with shoulders back, chest out. Cameron slouches. They were teaching him to be me, or teaching each other to be me. The notes went back and forth between what looked like 4 or 5 different people, all coaching my uncle on how to better imitate my behavior. I felt sick. I went to the window and looked out at the quiet street. Diane was on her porch watching my house. When she saw me, she waved enthusiastically. I called the police, non-emergency line. "I need to report something strange." The officer who showed up was sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful. "Your uncle passed away, so there's no immediate threat. And the photos, while concerning, aren't technically illegal if they were taken in public spaces. As for the neighbors, unless they've done something overtly threatening, there's not much we can do." "No, but my advice is to install a security system and maybe consider a restraining order if anyone makes you feel unsafe. But from what you're describing, it sounds like your uncle was a lonely man who became overly invested in his only relative." After the officer left, I sat in the darkening living room and tried to think. Why would my uncle study me so obsessively? Why would he share that information with neighbors who apparently were helping him learn to imitate me? I went back to the journal and read more carefully. The entries changed tone about 8 months before his death. They're noticing the differences. I'm not aging right. Cameron is getting older, but I'm not. They're starting to ask questions. Douglas commented yesterday that I look exactly like I did 5 years ago. Meeting at Diane's house tonight, I think they know. Or they're starting to figure it out. They know. All of them. Showed them the photos, the research, everything. They were shocked at first, but Douglas understood. He said his lease is almost up too. Diane started crying. She doesn't want to go. None of us do. New plan, we prepare Cameron together. All of us learn him. When the time comes, whoever's lease expires first gets him. We'll all help with the transition. It's only fair. We've been neighbors for 20 years. The writing got shaky toward the end. Headaches getting worse, running out of time. Lease ends in 3 weeks. Cameron is almost ready. I've watched him enough, learned enough. The house is prepared, the neighbors know the plan. When it happens, they'll help him adjust, help him learn to be me until his lease expires and he needs to find his own replacement. That's how it works on Maple Street. The final entry was dated 2 days before his death. Aneurysm today. Doctor says it could rupture any time. Diane says not to worry, the transfer doesn't require me to be alive, just present in the house at the moment of expiration. Cameron will inherit, Cameron will come, Cameron will learn, and when Cameron's 20 years are up, he'll find someone to teach, someone to prepare, someone to pass this on to. The houses must be occupied, the leases must be fulfilled. That's the covenant. I dropped the journal. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I called the estate lawyer. Mr. Patterson, I need to know the exact terms of my uncle's will. Papers shuffled. There is an old covenant on the Maple Street properties. Goes back to 1904 when the neighborhood was developed. All property owners agree to maintain residence for a minimum of 20 years, with transfer only to blood relatives when possible. It's an antiquated clause, probably unenforceable now, but it's still on the books. Your uncle purchased the property in 2004, so his 20-year obligation would have been fulfilled next year. He stopped. He died 3 weeks before his 20-year mark. I looked out the window again. More neighbors were on their porches now, all of them watching my house. Diane, Douglas, an older couple I'd met earlier, a middle-aged man who'd brought me cookies. All of them had lived on Maple Street for decades, according to the welcome packet Diane had given me. Most of them had been here 15, 18, 20 years. All of them approaching their own lease expirations. All of them looking at me with that same desperate, hungry expression. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice, familiar. It's Diane. I saw your light on and wanted to check if you're settling in okay. We're having a neighborhood meeting tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at my house, to welcome you properly. Robert always came to the meetings. We're hoping you will too. Just neighbors being neighborly. We like to stay close on Maple Street. Look out for one another. Help each other through transitions. Robert would have wanted you to be part of the community. You are part of the community now, whether you realize it or not. Silence. Then, Cameron, you don't understand. The covenant isn't optional. Once you take residence, you're bound. 20 years. And if you try to leave before then, well, the neighborhood doesn't allow that. The houses need to be occupied. The leases need to be fulfilled. That's how we stay. We're survivors. There's a difference. Your uncle survived 20 years. He learned the rules, followed them, and when his time was almost up, he did what he was supposed to. He prepared a replacement. You. And now it's your turn. 20 years, Cameron. And then you'll do what he did. You'll find someone, study them, bring them here, teach them to be you while you learn to be them. That's the cycle. I hung up and ran to my car, but when I opened the door, Douglas was standing there blocking my way. His smile was gentle, almost paternal. It's late for a drive. Robert never drove at night. You should stay consistent with his patterns, at least at first. Cameron, I know this is overwhelming. We all went through it, but you'll adjust. Everyone does. The first few weeks are hard, but then you start to understand. The neighborhood takes care of us. Keeps us here, keeps us safe. 20 years and then you move on, pass the house to someone new and start fresh somewhere else. It's not a curse. I'm leaving. I shoved past him, got in my car and drove. I didn't stop until I was 200 miles away in a hotel in Pennsylvania, every door locked, lights on. That was 4 months ago. I never went back to Maple Street. I hired a property management company to handle selling the house remotely. They listed it, but there have been no offers. The real estate agent says potential buyers are put off by the neighborhood. Says the neighbors are unusually interested in who might move in. asking invasive questions, showing up at open houses to interrogate prospects. I still get calls from Diane's number. I never answer. The voicemails are always the same. "Cameron, you need to come home. Your lease isn't fulfilled. The house is waiting. We're all waiting." I've tried researching Maple Street, the original development, the 1904 covenant. What I did find were property records going back 100 years. And I noticed a pattern. Every house on Maple Street has transferred ownership dozens of times, but always after exactly 20 years and always to a relative of the previous owner. When relatives weren't available, the owners died and the houses sat empty until someone with the faintest blood connection could be found. Second cousins, distant nephews, anyone who shared even a drop of family blood. The houses never sell to strangers. Never. And the people who complete their 20 years? I tried tracking some of them down. Most disappeared from public records entirely after their transfers. Just gone. No trace, like they'd never existed. But I found one. A woman who'd lived on Maple Street from 1983 to 2003. She was still alive, living in a nursing home in Florida under a different name. I drove down to meet her. She was 80-something, frail, confused, but when I mentioned Maple Street, her eyes cleared and she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "You got out," she whispered. "I inherited a house there. Then you're not safe. You broke the covenant. The neighborhood doesn't forget." She pulled me closer. I fulfilled my 20 years. I did everything right. I found a replacement, taught her everything, transferred the house, and I left. But it followed me. It's always followed me. Every place I go, I see them. People from Maple Street, watching, waiting. They want me to come back. They say my lease wasn't properly fulfilled, that I did something wrong. Who are they? The neighborhood, the houses, the covenant, it's all the same thing. It's alive, Cameron. Maple Street is alive, and it feeds on us. 20 years of our lives, our identities, our blood. And when we leave, we have to give it someone new, or it comes to collect. You have to go back. You have to finish your lease. I left the nursing home shaking. I drove home to my apartment in Chicago and tried to forget. Tried to convince myself it was all delusion, trauma, coincidence. But yesterday, I saw Diane, standing across the street from my building, watching my window. When I looked again, she was gone. And last night, I found a photo slipped under my door, me, walking to my car last week, on the back in my uncle's handwriting. Year 1 of 20. Welcome home, Cameron. Story 5. The voicemails he left himself. The landline wouldn't stop ringing. I'd been staying in my uncle's house for 3 days, sorting through estate paperwork and trying to decide what to keep, what to donate, what to trash. The lawyer said utilities were paid through the end of the year, so I'd left everything connected. Water, electric, phone. The phone was an old-fashioned landline, the kind with a cord sitting on a table in the hallway. It rang at odd times, 2 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 9 at night. Never during what you'd call normal hours. I let it go to the machine every time because who even had landlines anymore? Anyone who needed to reach me would call my cell. But after the 14th or 15th call, I got curious about who was so persistent. I pressed play on the answering machine. My uncle had been dead for 6 weeks. Who'd been calling him that many times since then? The first message started playing. "Hey, it's me. It's Wednesday around 10 p.m. I need you to remember something. When you hear scratching in the walls, don't investigate. Don't look. Just go to the basement and wait until it stops. I'm serious. Don't try to find out what it is. I made that mistake already and I'm trying to save you from doing the same. This is important. Please remember, okay?" My uncle's voice, calling himself, leaving himself a warning. The machine clicked to the next message. It's me again. Thursday morning. I forgot to mention, the scratching usually starts around 11 p.m. It goes for about 20 minutes. If it goes longer than that, if it goes past midnight, you need to leave the house completely. Get in your car and drive somewhere, anywhere. Just don't be here after midnight when it's still scratching. I stood in the hallway staring at the answering machine. The next message. Friday afternoon, me again. I'm leaving these messages for both of us, for me now, in case I forget, and for whoever comes after. If you're hearing this and you're not me, I'm sorry. I tried to fix this before I died, but I ran out of time. The scratching is just the beginning. There are other things, worse things. I'm documenting everything. I pulled a chair over and sat down. The messages continued one after another, all from my uncle's cell phone, all recorded in the last 6 weeks of his life. The basement door locks from the outside for a reason. Others were longer, more detailed. It's been 3 weeks since I noticed the scratching. I tried to find the source last night. Took a hammer to the wall in the upstairs hallway where it's loudest. There's nothing behind the drywall, no pipes, no wires, no animals, just empty space. But when I put my ear to the hole I made, I could hear something breathing in there, something big. The scratching stopped after that, but now there's something worse. Footsteps in the attic, heavy footsteps walking back and forth. I don't have an attic. The house is single-story, but I hear them every night now, right above my bedroom. I checked my phone for the date. My uncle had recorded that message 39 days before his death. The messages got worse as they progressed. More frantic, more specific, more terrified. The handprints are getting bigger. Started as child size, now they're adult hands. Sometimes I find them on the ceiling. I saw my reflection blink. I was standing still, staring at the bathroom mirror, and my reflection blinked when I didn't. Then it smiled. Something's living in the crawl space under the house. I hear it moving around down there at night. I sealed up the access panel, but I can still hear it. The 31st message was different. My uncle's voice was shaking, barely controlled panic. I made a mistake, a big one. I tried to leave, packed a bag, got in my car, drove to a hotel 20 miles away. I thought if I just got out of the house, if I put distance between me and whatever's happening here, I'd be safe. But when I opened the hotel room door, I was in my hallway, not the hotel, my hallway. The door opened directly into my house, like the hotel didn't exist. I tried again, different hotel, different direction, same thing. Every door leads back here. I think I'm trapped. I stopped the playback, went to the front door, opened it. The front yard looked normal. My car in the driveway, the street beyond, neighbors' houses, everything exactly as it should be. I stepped outside, walked to my car, got in, started it, drove to the end of the block, turned around, came back. No problems, no weird door phenomena. My uncle had been sick, I told myself. Brain tumor, maybe. Hallucinations. These messages were the product of a deteriorating mind, nothing more. But my hands were shaking as I went back inside and pressed play again. Message 34. I'm running out of time. The doctor confirmed it today. Glioblastoma, aggressive, inoperable. 6 weeks, maybe 8. But that's not why I'm leaving this message. I need to tell you about the rules. I've figured out some rules, the scratching. You can survive it if you follow the instructions I left. The footsteps, ignore them, don't acknowledge them. They'll stop eventually. The mirrors, just don't look. The handprints, clean them off before midnight. There are patterns to this, rules. If you follow them, you can coexist with whatever's in this house. I've been doing it for 4 months now. It's not easy, but it's possible. I'm leaving detailed notes in the desk drawer organized by phenomena. Message 39. The thing in the crawl space is talking now. I can hear it through the floorboards. It knows my name. It's calling me, saying, Robert, come down here. It sounds like my sister, the one who died when we were kids. It sounds exactly like her. I know it's not her. I know it. Message 42. I don't think I'm alone when I record these. I think it's listening. Earlier today, I left myself a message about the basement. Said I was going to seal it permanently, concrete over the crawl space access. But when I played the message back to make sure it recorded, there was something else on the recording. Breathing. Someone breathing right next to me while I talked. But I was alone. I was alone. I'm going to keep leaving messages anyway, because what else can I do? Maybe it wants me to stop. Maybe that's its plan. But I won't. Message 45. It showed me who's in the crawl space. I don't want to describe it. I can't. If I say it out loud, if I give it that reality, I don't think I'll survive the night. Just know that it's been here longer than the house. The house was built on top of it, over it, trapping it, and now it's angry. It wants out. It's been trying to get out for decades. I found newspaper articles about the previous owners. 3 of them died in this house, unexplained deaths. I think it kills them when they figure out too much. Message 46, dated 2 days before my uncle died. This is the last message I'm going to leave. I can feel it happening. The pressure in my head, the way my vision tunnels. The tumor's growing fast, or something's making it grow. I think the house speeds things up when it wants you gone. I've violated too many rules, learned too many things. But I'm leaving everything I know in the desk drawer. Notes. Documentation, instructions. If you're hearing this and you inherited this house, I'm so sorry. I tried to put it in my will that the property should be demolished, but the executor said I can't do that. Can't destroy an asset that's part of the estate. So someone's going to inherit this. Someone's going to live here. Maybe you. Follow the rules. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to fix it. Just survive until you can find a way out that I couldn't. And whatever you do, the message cut off, static for a few seconds, then a click. I waited for message 47. 4 days ago, after my uncle died, the message started playing. At first it was just breathing, slow, deliberate, wet breathing, like someone with fluid in their lungs. Then my uncle's voice, but wrong, flat, emotionless. Robert's gone. But you're here now. That's good. The house needs someone. It's been empty too long. We've been waiting. Come down to the crawl space. We want to meet you properly. We want to show you what Robert saw before he died. We want to show you where you'll be in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however long it takes. Come down. Come down now. We're calling you, and you're obligated to answer. That's the rule. That's the most important rule Robert never told you. When we call you by name, you have to answer. The breathing got louder, closer, like something was right next to the phone. Then clear as day, not from the recording but from somewhere in the house, my name. In my uncle's voice, calling from below the floor, I grabbed my keys and ran for the front door, opened it. The hallway, my uncle's hallway. The door opened directly into his house, into the spot where I was already standing. I tried again, same thing. Every door, every window, every possible exit, they all opened into the hallway. I was trapped, just like he'd been. My phone rang, not the landline, my cell phone, unknown number. I answered it without thinking. My uncle's voice, but layered, multiple voices speaking in unison. Now you know too much, now you're obligated. Come to the crawl space, we're waiting. I hung up, tried calling 911. The call wouldn't connect, tried texting, no service. My phone showed full bars, but nothing would go through. The scratching started in the walls, 11 p.m., just like the messages said. But this time it wasn't distant, wasn't confined to one room. It was everywhere, all around me, in every wall, the ceiling, the floor, the sound of something massive dragging itself through impossible spaces. The footsteps started above me, heavy, methodical, pacing back and forth across a ceiling that shouldn't exist. Handprints appeared on the mirror in the hallway, small ones, then bigger, then enormous, palms the size of dinner plates. I ran to the basement like the messages said. Locked myself in. The scratching stopped after 20 minutes. The footsteps faded. I waited in the dark, following the rules my uncle had left, and eventually everything went quiet. That was 5 weeks ago. I'm still here. Still trapped. Still following the rules. I've read all my uncle's notes, learned the patterns, figured out how to survive. The house lets me exist as long as I obey, as long as I don't try to leave, as long as I answer when it calls. I've started leaving myself voicemails just like my uncle did, documenting everything, warning myself about new phenomena, new rules I've discovered. The house doesn't mind. I think it likes having a record, likes knowing its patterns are being preserved. I found my uncle's death certificate in the desk. Cause of death, glioblastoma. But there's a note from the medical examiner, handwritten, tumor growth rate inconsistent with normal progression, accelerated decay in brain tissue. My head's been hurting for 3 days now, pressure behind my eyes, vision going fuzzy at the edges. I'm leaving this message for whoever inherits the house after me, because there will be someone. The house makes sure there's always someone. Follow the rules. Don't try to understand. Don't look in the mirrors. Don't open the crawl space. And whatever you do, don't listen to the voicemails. Because once you know the rules, you're obligated to follow them. And once you're obligated, the house won't let you leave. I can hear it calling me now. My name in voices I recognize, my mother, my sister, my dead grandfather. All of them calling from below the floor, asking me to come down, to come see, to come join them in the space between the foundation and the earth. Maybe I will. Maybe that's easier than waiting for the tumor that's definitely growing now. The same tumor that killed my uncle, the same tumor that probably killed every previous owner. Or maybe I'll keep leaving messages, keep documenting, keep surviving. The scratching's starting again. It's early tonight, only 9 p.m. That's new. That's not following the rules. I think the house is getting impatient. I think my time is almost up. I'm sorry, whoever you are. I tried to warn you. I tried to leave enough information to help you survive. But the truth is, I don't think anyone survives this house. I think we just postpone the inevitable, following rules that change whenever it gets bored, waiting for the moment when it decides we've learned too much. The handprints are appearing again. On the ceiling this time, directly above where I'm sitting. I have to go. I have to get to the basement. But before I do, one last message, the most important one my uncle never left. Don't trust the rules. They're not there to help you survive. They're there to keep you compliant, to keep you trapped, to keep you entertaining. The house doesn't want you to leave, and eventually you'll stop wanting to leave too. The scratching's getting louder. It's in the room with me now. I can see the walls bulging, something massive pushing through from the other side. Oh God. It's not in the walls. It is the walls. The house isn't haunted. The house is the... Message ends. Message 48 was left 3 days ago. I haven't listened to it yet. I'm afraid of what I'll hear. Afraid of whose voice it'll be. But I will listen eventually. Because that's the rule, that's what the house requires, and I always follow the rules now. Story 6. The renovation that went too deep. The contractors walked off the job on day 3, all 4 of them mid-morning, dropped their tools and left without a word. I got a text from the foreman an hour later. Can't finish, refunding deposit. I'd hired them to gut and modernize my father's house before selling it. The place was a 1970s time capsule. Dark paneling and shag carpet, worth maybe 1/3 of what it could be with some updates. The contractors were supposed to start with the basement, remove the old wood paneling, open up the space, make it usable. They'd gotten as far as tearing out the east wall when they found it. I drove over immediately. let myself in through the garage and called down the basement stairs. Hello? Silence. The basement was a mess. Drop cloths, power tools, chunks of drywall everywhere. The east wall was completely torn away, and behind it, there was another room. Not on any blueprint, not in any housing records, a space about 12 feet deep running the entire length of the basement, sealed behind the original foundation. The contractors had opened a section big enough to walk through. I clicked on my flashlight and stepped into the hidden room. It was finished. Carpeted floor, painted walls, even a light fixture hanging from the ceiling, though the bulb was long dead. But everything was covered in dust, decades of it, thick and undisturbed. There was furniture, a couch, a coffee table, a bookshelf, a small kitchenette with a mini fridge and a hot plate. In the corner, 2 twin beds with bare mattresses, children's beds. On the walls, someone had put up posters, cartoon characters I remembered from my own childhood. A periodic table, a map of the world, things you'd see in a kid's bedroom or a classroom. The bookshelf was full of children's books, board games, toys, everything organized, everything carefully arranged. Like someone had been living here, like children had been living here. I found the door at the back of the hidden room behind the couch. It was heavy metal with a wheel lock like something from a bank vault. I tried turning the wheel. It was stiff, but it moved, and after some effort, the door opened. A staircase led down, not normal basement stairs. These were stone old, descending into darkness that my flashlight couldn't penetrate. I called the foreman. We opened the wall and saw that room, saw the furniture, the kids' stuff. Then Mitchell went to the back and found that door, the one with the vault lock. He opened it and looked down those stairs, and he just started screaming. Wouldn't stop. We had to drag him out of there. He's at the ER now. Won't tell anyone what he saw. Just keeps saying your father knew. I don't know, man. I'm not going back to find out. You need to seal that wall back up, or better yet, tear the whole house down. Don't sell that place to some family. He hung up. I stood at the top of the stone stairs with my flashlight, trying to decide, call the police and tell them what? That I found a hidden room and a creepy staircase? That wasn't illegal. Weird, definitely. Disturbing, absolutely, but not a crime. I descended the stairs. 20 steps down, the stone walls gave way to earth. Carved earth like a tunnel with wooden supports every few feet to prevent collapse. The air was cold and damp, and there was a smell I couldn't identify, metallic, organic, wrong. The tunnel opened into a chamber. It was big, maybe 30 feet across, with a domed ceiling carved out of the earth. The walls were covered in writing, thousands of words scratched directly into the dirt, covering every available surface. Dates, names, please. Help us. He won't let us leave. Mama, I want to go home. It's been 4 years, someone please. The messages were written in different hands, different styles, some neat and controlled, some desperate and jagged. They covered the walls from floor to ceiling, layered over each other where space ran out. In the center of the chamber was a wooden post, thick as a telephone pole, driven into the ground. Attached to the post were chains, 7 chains, each ending in a metal cuff, and each cuff was small, child-sized. I felt vomit rising in my throat. There were items scattered around the base of the post, shoes, small shoes, clothes rotted and decayed. A stuffed animal, fur matted and discolored. A hair bow. And bones, small bones, thin and delicate, half buried in the dirt floor. I ran back up the tunnel, up the stone stairs, through the hidden room, back into the basement. I was shaking so hard I could barely dial 911. I need police now. I think I found where children were kept. They came fast. 2 patrol officers first, then detectives, then forensics, then what looked like half the county police department. They went down into the chamber with lights and cameras and evidence bags. I sat in my car in the driveway and watched them work. Detective Morrison came to talk to me after 4 hours. She was mid-50s, gray hair, tired eyes that had seen too much. Mr. 1982. I didn't even know this house had a basement until I was 12. He kept the door locked, said it was just storage. She nodded, making notes. We're going to need to excavate that chamber. Preliminary examination suggests there are remains from at least 6 individuals, all juvenile. 1 year before my father bought the house. We're checking records now. But Mr. Patterson, I need to ask, did your father ever mention anything unusual about this property? No. He just said he got a good deal on it. It was foreclosure, I think. Morrison's expression darkened. The previous owner was a man named Arthur Wainwright. Disappeared in 1982, right around the time your father purchased the property. Never found, presumed dead. They found my father's files in the office upstairs. Boxes of documents meticulously organized like everything else in his life. And there, in a folder labeled Property Purchase 1982, they found it. A letter, handwritten, dated March 1982. To whom it may concern, my name is Arthur Wainwright, and if you're reading this, I'm either dead or in custody. I can't live with what I've done anymore. I can't keep feeding it. The chamber under the house is old. Older than the house, older than the town. I found it when I was digging the foundation in 1963. Just a hole in the earth, with stone stairs leading down. I should have filled it in, should have built somewhere else, but I went down to explore and I found the post, the chains, evidence that this place had been used before, maybe 100 years ago, maybe more, and when I touched the post, I felt it, a presence, a hunger. It spoke to me without words, showed me what it needed. Children. It needed children. Not to hurt them, it promised. Just to keep them. To feed on their fear, their desperation, their youth. It would take years from them, drain them slowly, and in exchange it would give me what I wanted. Wealth. Success, everything. I was weak. I agreed. I took the first child in 1965, a runaway from 2 towns over, no one who'd be missed. Kept her in the room I built, the hidden room behind the basement wall. Fed her, kept her clean, kept her alive, but every few weeks I'd take her down to the chamber, chain her to the post, and leave her overnight. In the morning she'd be older, not much, just a little, like months had passed for her while only hours passed for me. It worked. My business took off, money poured in, everything the thing promised came true. But the girl died after 4 years, used up, drained, the thing needed another. I took 6 more children over 16 years. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I know what I am. But I can't anymore. The thing is getting stronger. It's hungry all the time now. It's asking for more, for adults. For me. I think it's going to break free. I think the post won't hold it much longer. I'm going to seal the chamber, pour concrete, brick up the door, bury this house if I have to, and then I'm going to turn myself in. But if I don't, if something happens to me first, whoever buys this house needs to know, needs to understand. The foundation was built over that hole to keep it contained. Don't disturb it. Don't go down there. And for God's sake, don't let children near this property. Arthur Wainwright. Clipped to the letter was another document, a deed transfer. My father had purchased the house from the bank in April 1982. At the bottom, in my father's handwriting, Wainwright didn't seal it. He disappeared before he could. I have to finish what he started. My father had known. He'd found Wainwright's letter, bought the house specifically to contain what was underneath, and spent 40 years making sure no one discovered the chamber. He'd built over it, reinforced the walls, kept the basement locked, kept me and everyone else away from it. He'd spent his entire life guarding that chamber, making sure what was down there stayed buried. And then he died, and I inherited it. And I'd hired contractors to tear the walls down. Detective Morrison found more documents. My father's personal journal, hidden in a safe. Decades of entries describing his efforts to contain the chamber, to reinforce the seals to keep it dormant. And in the final entries written weeks before his death. It's waking up. After 40 years dormant, it's stirring. I can feel it moving under the house at night. The post won't hold it much longer. Wainwright was right, it's getting stronger. It wants out. I've done everything I can, reinforced the tunnel, blessed the foundation, tried every binding ritual I could find. But I'm dying, and I don't know what will happen when I'm gone. I can't tell anyone. No one would believe me. They'd think I was senile. I'm leaving the house to my son. I've left instructions in the safety deposit box, everything he needs to know, every precaution I've taken. I never checked the safety deposit box. The lawyer mentioned it during estate settlement, but I'd been too busy, too focused on selling the property and moving on. If I'd checked, I would have found my father's instructions. His warnings, his lifetime of research on how to keep the thing contained. Instead, I'd hired contractors to tear down the very walls he'd spent decades reinforcing. The excavation took 3 weeks. They removed remains, documented evidence, dismantled the chains, and every night during those 3 weeks I had the same dream. Something massive stirring in the earth. Something ancient and patient. Something that had been chained for over a century, fed periodically by monsters like Wainwright, then starved for 40 years while my father kept it contained. And now the seals were broken, the walls were down, the chamber was open. Detective Morrison called me on the night they finished the excavation. "Mr. Patterson, we've removed everything from the chamber. We're sealing it permanently, filling it with concrete, collapsing the tunnel. The property is going to be condemned, but you won't be liable." "What about the post?" Silence. "There was no post, Mr. Patterson, just the chains bolted directly into the bedrock. That's impossible, I saw it. There's no post in any of our photographs, no evidence one ever existed." I drove out there that night. The property was cordoned off with police tape, but I ducked under it and went inside. The basement was dark. The hole in the east wall had been temporarily boarded up. I pulled the boards aside and climbed through into the hidden room. Everything was gone. The furniture, the toys, the children's belongings, all removed as evidence. The room was empty except for dust. I walked to the back, to the metal door. It was open, the wheel lock disengaged. The stone stairs led down into darkness. I descended, even though every instinct screamed at me to run, down the 20 steps, through the carved tunnel, into the chamber. They were right, no post, just chains bolted to the floor, 7 of them in a circle. But in the center of that circle, where the post should have been, the ground was disturbed. Fresh earth, like something had been pulled up from below, or pushed up from underneath. And around the edge of the chamber, new writing had appeared on the walls. Fresh scratches in the dirt, words that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. 40 years hungry. Finally free. "Thank you for opening the door." I ran, up the tunnel, up the stairs, through the basement, out of the house. Behind me I heard something massive moving through the earth. Not footsteps. Something dragging itself, pulling itself up through soil and stone, following me toward the surface. I got in my car and drove. I called Morrison from the road, told her what I'd seen. She said they'd check it out, said I was probably traumatized, seeing things, suffering from stress, but 2 days later the house collapsed. Not gradually, suddenly all at once, like something underneath had pulled it down. The foundation caved in, the structure pancaked, and when emergency crews arrived, they found a massive sinkhole where the basement had been. The sinkhole was 40 feet deep, they said, and at the bottom they found more tunnels, an entire network of them spreading out under the neighborhood, under the town. Some of them collapsed, some still passable. They've been exploring them for months now. They've found more chambers, more chains, more remains, and they've found evidence that the tunnel network is old, ancient. predating the town, the state, maybe the country, like something had been living underneath this area for centuries and people had been feeding it all that time. My father didn't create the problem. He didn't even discover it. He just inherited it, same as me, and spent his life trying to contain something that was always going to break free eventually. I think about him now, living for 40 years in that house, directly above a prisoner he was too afraid to free and too moral to feed. Spending decades reinforcing walls, blessing foundations, praying that his seals would hold long enough for whatever was below to starve. But you can't starve something that old, something that patient. You can only postpone the inevitable. The tunnels are still being explored. They've evacuated 3 neighborhoods so far, condemned a dozen properties. They're finding new chambers every week, new evidence of feeding, new proof that this had been going on for generations. And people are disappearing. Not many, just a few. A child here, a teenager there. Runaways mostly. People no one misses. Detective Morrison called me last week. Mr. Patterson, we need to ask you some questions about your father's activities. Specifically about a period in the mid-1990s where there are gaps in his journal. We're trying to establish... I hung up. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear her theory about whether my father ever broke down. Whether 40 years of guarding that thing led him to feed it, just once, just to keep it docile. I don't want to know if my father was a hero or a collaborator or something in between. I just know that I'm the one who tore down his walls. I'm the one who set it free, and every night I dream about something massive pulling itself through the earth, spreading out under the town, under the state, under everything. Hungry after 40 years of containment, free after a century of chains. Looking for children to feed on, looking for basements to hide in, looking for people like Wainwright, people weak enough to make deals, and looking, I think, for people like my father. People who know but won't speak. People who'll spend their lives guarding chambers, reinforcing seals, trying desperately to contain what they should have exposed to sunlight decades ago. I sold everything, left the state, changed my name. But sometimes I feel it, a vibration in the ground, a sense of something massive moving underneath, following, tracking, patient. My father contained it for 40 years. I wonder how long I'll have to run before it digs I've disturbed it enough to make me worth hunting. I wonder if it's already beneath me right now, waiting for me to sleep, to settle, to become predictable enough to catch. And I wonder in my darkest moments if running is pointless. If everyone who knows about it is already marked, already claimed, already feeding it, whether we want to or not. Story 7. The security system. He installed backwards. The security company was confused from the start. Mr. Tour. The technician, a guy in his mid-20s named Josh, stood in my cousin Derek's living room with a tablet scrolling through records. But we need to do a full inspection first because the setup here is... Well, all the cameras are pointed inward at the interior of the house. There are 12 cameras total, and not one of them covers a window or door or any entry point. They're all aimed at rooms, hallways, inside closets. My cousin Derek had died 3 weeks earlier. Suicide, they said, though the police report was vague. Hung himself in his bedroom closet. I was his only living relative, so I'd inherited his modest house in the suburbs. The house itself seemed fine. Clean, recently updated, nothing obviously wrong, but there were details that didn't make sense. Like the security system Josh was describing. I asked. Josh pulled up the camera interface on his tablet. See? Camera 1 is in the living room, pointed at the couch. Camera 2 is in the kitchen, pointed at the table. 3 is in the hallway, aimed at the basement door. 4 through 6 are in the bedroom. 3 different angles covering the bed, the closet, the bathroom door. Maybe he was paranoid. Josh switched to a different screen. The motion sensors. Normal setup would have them at doors and windows alerting you when someone enters. His are inside closets, inside cabinets, under the bed, and all the door locks. They're reinforced, sure, but the reinforcement is on the inside, like he wasn't trying to keep people out. I felt cold. Can you pull up archived footage? Josh hesitated. I'm the property owner now. He pulled up the archive. System keeps rolling footage for 90 days. Derek had died on October 14th. Start with October 13th. Josh pulled up the footage from multiple cameras simultaneously. The screen split into 12 views showing different areas of the house. At first, everything looked normal. Derek moving through rooms, making dinner, watching TV. But his behavior was strange. He kept looking around over his shoulder like he expected to see someone. And every few minutes he'd pull out his phone, check something, then look at specific spots in the room. The corner, the closet door, behind furniture. Josh asked. I don't know. Josh sped up the footage. At 9:47 p.m., Derek went into the bedroom. He pulled out a measuring tape and measured the distance between his bed and the closet door. Then he moved the bed 3 feet to the left, measured again, and nodded like he'd achieved something important. He checked all the closets in the house, opening doors carefully, looking inside for a long time before closing them. At 11:15 p.m., he went to the basement. The camera there showed him descending the stairs, walking to the far corner, and staring at the wall for almost 10 minutes without moving. This is really weird, Josh muttered. At 1:30 a.m., Derek was in bed, but he wasn't sleeping. He was lying completely still, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Every few minutes, he'd glance at the closet door. At 3:18 a.m., he got up, walked to the closet, and opened it. He stood there looking inside for several minutes. Then he stepped into the closet and closed the door behind him. The bedroom cameras showed the closed closet door for the next 4 hours. At 7:22 a.m., the police arrived, responding to a wellness check called in by Derek's employer when he didn't show up for work. They found him in the closet, hung from the closet rod, but the footage showed something wrong. The closet door never opened from the time he went in at 3:18 until the police arrived at 7:22. 4 hours. If he'd hanged himself, it should have been obvious on the bedroom cameras. The door would have been open, or there would have been sounds, some indication of what happened. I asked. Josh looked uncomfortable. You said there were 12 cameras. He scrolled through the list. Camera 12, interior closet. He clicked on it. The footage was dark, but the camera had infrared. When Josh pulled up the October 13th footage and synced it to 3:18 a.m., we watched Derek open the closet door and step inside. But he didn't hang himself. He stood perfectly still in the closet facing the back wall for over 4 hours, just standing, not moving, like he was waiting for something. At 7:20 a.m., 2 minutes before the police arrived, something changed. Derek moved, but wrong, jerky, puppet-like. He reached up and grabbed the closet rod. Then his hands moved to his own throat and tightened, and he lifted himself. Not jumped, not kicked a chair out, but somehow lifted his own body weight with his hands around his own neck until he was hanging, feet dangling, and he held himself there, choking until he died. The footage showed him strangling himself while hovering in midair with no support. Josh dropped the tablet. What the fuck? I grabbed the tablet and kept watching. After Derek's body went limp, it hung there for 90 seconds. Then very slowly it lowered back down until his feet touched the floor. His hands released from his throat and his body stood upright again, facing the back wall of the closet. And then it opened its eyes. Derek's body, dead, eyes glazed, opened its eyes and looked directly at the camera and smiled. The police arrived a minute later. The footage from the bedroom cameras showed them entering, finding Derek's body hanging in the closet. But the closet camera showed something different. It showed Derek's body standing on the floor, facing the wall, perfectly still, while the police photograph and remove a body that the closet camera insisted wasn't hanging. Two different realities. One from the bedroom cameras, one from inside the closet. Josh was hyperventilating. "I need to leave. Wait, help me understand. No, I'm done. I'm canceling this service call." He grabbed his tablet and ran for the door. I stood alone in Derek's living room and pulled out my phone. Started going through his texts, his emails, looking for anything that would explain what I'd just seen. I found a thread with an unknown number, messages going back 6 months. "Derek, it's happening again. Unknown, to check the cameras." "Derek, I was standing at the basement door for 2 hours, unknown. You need to reinforce the closets. Unknown, for when it's not you." The messages got worse. Derek describing lost time, finding evidence that he'd been places he didn't remember going, doing things he didn't remember doing. The unknown number giving him instructions. Install cameras facing inward so he could monitor himself. Put locks on the inside of doors to prevent himself from leaving. Measure distances to identify when the house layout changed slightly, when reality shifted. The last message was from October 12th. "Derek, I think it's going to try tonight. I can feel it." Unknown. "Don't go into the closet, no matter what. That's where it's strongest." "Derek, if I don't make it, someone needs to know." Unknown. "No one will believe you. Just like they didn't believe me, but I'll keep watching." I called the number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. The greeting was Derek's voice. "You've reached Derek Hayes. If you're calling this number, it means you found the messages. It means you've inherited my house. I'm sorry." I tried to stop it. I tried to contain it, but it's been living in this house longer than I have. Wearing previous owners, wearing me, learning to be human. The cameras were my attempt to catch it, to document the times when I wasn't me. But cameras can't see it directly. They only see the contradictions, the impossible things, the moments when reality doesn't match up. Check the footage from the last 5 years. You'll see, you'll understand, and then you need to leave. Don't stay in this house. Don't try to fight it. The message ended. I pulled up the archived footage on Josh's tablet, went back months, then years, watched Derek's daily life and fast forward. And I saw them. Moments of discontinuity. Times when the bedroom cameras showed Derek sleeping in bed, but the closet camera showed his body standing in the closet facing the wall. Times when the kitchen cameras showed him eating dinner, but the basement camera showed him in the basement, standing motionless in the corner for hours. Times when cameras would show him in 2 places simultaneously, and the 2 versions would move differently, act differently, like they were 2 separate people wearing the same face. The earlier I went in the footage, the less frequent the contradictions were. 5 years ago, just occasional anomalies. 4 years ago, maybe once a month. 3 years ago, weekly. 2 years ago, daily. By the end, in the weeks before his death, the contradictions were constant. Derek's body was in multiple places simultaneously in almost every footage capture. Like whatever was wearing him had gotten stronger, more present, less concerned with maintaining the illusion of being one person. I found footage from October 1st, 2 weeks before he died. Derek sitting at the kitchen table talking to someone off camera, but every other camera in the house showed him alone. Other voice, also Derek's voice, but wrong. "Not long. Your resistance is fading. Soon I won't need to split attention anymore." Other voice. "I'm what lived here before houses existed, before humans built walls and doors. This land was mine. When they built here, they trapped me between spaces, between rooms, between walls, in the gaps and corners and closets. But I learned to move through human spaces by wearing human shapes. I've been doing it for 100 years, wearing owners, using them. When they die, I find someone new, and now I have you. Derek, I'm documenting everything. Other voice. No one believes. No one ever does. They see the footage and think malfunction, editing, stress-induced hallucination. They rationalize. And while they rationalize, I'm already wearing them, already learning to be them. I turned off the tablet, looked around Derek's living room, my living room now. 12 cameras, all pointed inward, monitoring me. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app, accessed the live feed, saw myself sitting on the couch from 4 different angles. Then I switched to the closet camera and saw myself standing in the closet facing the back wall, even though I was sitting on the couch. The version of me in the closet turned slowly, looked at the camera and smiled. I ran, got in my car, drove to a hotel, checked in, called a real estate agent from the parking lot. I need to sell a property fast, as is. The agent was enthusiastic. Great! Never. I'm never going back there. You can't either. Just list it. Disclosure everything, property sold as is, no inspections, buyer assumes all risk. Sir, that's not really how... Please, she agreed reluctantly. The house sold in 3 weeks. Cash offer, no contingencies. I never learned who bought it. I didn't want to know. But I kept Josh's tablet, kept monitoring the security cameras remotely, watching whoever moved into Derek's house. It was a young couple, late 20s, excited about their first home. They moved in on a Saturday, spent the week unpacking, setting up furniture. By the second week, I saw the discrepancies. The bedroom camera showing the wife asleep in bed, while the closet camera showed her standing in the closet, facing the wall. The husband cooking dinner in the kitchen while simultaneously standing motionless in the basement. I thought about calling them, warning them. But Derek's voicemail was right. No one would believe me. They'd think I was insane or a scammer or trying to sabotage the sale, so I just watched. Last week, I saw the husband install 3 new cameras, all pointed inward at himself, like he was starting to notice the lost time, the discontinuities, the sense that he wasn't always himself. He's fighting it, same as Derek did, and he'll lose, same as Derek did, because you can't fight something that's already wearing you. You can only document it, hope someone believes, and pray that whoever inherits next has the sense to run before it's too late. I sold the tablet last night, destroyed the SIM card, cut off my last connection to that house. But I still dream about it, about the closet, about standing in the dark facing the back wall, waiting for someone to open the door so I can step out wearing their face. I still check mirrors, making sure my reflection moves when I move, blinks when I blink. And sometimes late at night I feel like I'm in 2 places at once, here in my apartment and somewhere else, somewhere dark and close, standing perfectly still while something learns to be me. Derek tried to warn me with his security system, his cameras, his obsessive documentation. I'm trying to warn whoever comes next by writing this down, putting it somewhere public, hoping someone searching for information about that house will find it. But I know they won't believe me. Just like I didn't believe Derek. Not until it's too late. Not until they're standing in the closet facing the wall, watching themselves through cameras they installed to catch something they can't fight. The house is still there, still occupied, still waiting for the next owner. And the thing inside is patient. It's been there 100 years. It can wait 100 more. Story 8. The property line. He wouldn't cross. My grandfather's will was 8 pages long, but only 1 paragraph mattered. I leave my property in northern Maine, including all structures and 40 acres of forest land, to my grandson Austin, with 1 absolute condition. Under no circumstances may he or any guest cross the creek at the eastern property line. Failure to honor this condition will result in immediate forfeiture of the property. This is not negotiable. This is not symbolic. The lawyer, reading this aloud in his office, paused and looked at me over his glasses. Your grandfather was very insistent about this clause. Legally, you lose the property, it reverts to the state. He slid an envelope across the desk, my name written on it in my grandfather's shaky handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. Austin, don't cross the creek. Don't let anyone else cross it. Don't let animals cross it. If something comes back across from the other side, don't let it in the cabin. I've kept that line for 40 years. Keep it for 40 more, then pass it to someone you trust. What's on the other side can't cross running water on its own, but it will use anything that crosses to it. It's patient. It will wait forever. Just keep the line. Grandpa Joe. That was it. No explanation. Just cryptic warnings from a man who'd lived alone in the Maine woods for 4 decades. I drove up in late June. The property was beautiful. 40 acres of pine forest, a clearing with a well-maintained cabin, trails winding through the trees, and at the eastern edge, a creek maybe 8 feet wide flowing south through the property. The creek was the boundary. On my side, maintained trails, cleared brush, obvious signs of my grandfather's stewardship. On the other side, the forest was different, darker. Dense undergrowth, twisted trees, no paths visible. I stood at the creek and looked across. It was just forest, nothing unusual, nothing scary, just trees and shadows and the normal sounds of the woods. I respected my grandfather's wishes for 3 months. Stayed on my side of the creek, hiked the trails he'd maintained, fixed up the cabin. It was peaceful, isolated, exactly what I needed after a bad year in the city. Then, in early September, my dog got loose. Maggie was a golden retriever, friendly and obedient except when she caught a scent. That morning, she took off while I was making coffee, crashed through the brush heading east, and before I could stop her, she was across the creek, barking excitedly at something in the trees. I ran to the creek's edge. Maggie! She ignored me, disappearing into the undergrowth on the other side. I stood there, my grandfather's warning echoing in my head. Don't cross the creek. Don't let anyone else cross it. But it was just a dog chasing a squirrel. I wasn't going to lose her over a superstition. I crossed the creek. The water was cold, barely ankle deep. I climbed the far bank and pushed into the forest. Maggie! The forest on this side was wrong. Not obviously, not dramatically, just subtly off. The trees were too close together. The undergrowth was too thick, like it had never been maintained, never been walked through. And it was quiet. No birds, no insects, none of the ambient sound you expect in a forest. I found Maggie about 30 yards in. She was sitting perfectly still, staring at something deeper in the trees, not barking anymore, just staring. Her tail down, her body rigid. Maggie, come on! She didn't move. Didn't even acknowledge me. I followed her gaze into the trees, trying to see what had caught her attention. At first, I saw nothing, just trees, shadows, undergrowth. Then the shadows moved. Not wind movement, not animal movement. The shadows themselves shifted, condensed, pulled together into something that looked almost like a shape. Almost human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, proportions that didn't make sense. And it was looking at me. I felt it looking at me, even though it didn't have a face, didn't have eyes. I felt its attention, its focus, its interest. I grabbed Maggie's collar and pulled. She didn't resist, just let me drag her backwards, still staring at the shadow thing as we retreated. I crashed back through the undergrowth, pulled Maggie across the creek, didn't stop until we were back at the cabin with the door locked. Maggie sat by the window, staring east toward the creek, whining softly. That night, I heard scratching at the door. Not loud, not aggressive, just persistent, methodical scratching, like something testing the wood, learning its texture. I looked through the window, nothing visible, but the scratching continued, moving around the cabin, testing the walls, the door frame, the window sills. It stopped at dawn. Maggie wouldn't go outside. When I opened the door, she backed away, whining. I had to carry her out to do her business, and she stayed pressed against my leg, trembling, refusing to go more than a few feet from the cabin. That afternoon, I heard barking from across the creek. Maggie was inside with me, but something across the creek was barking with her voice, calling to me in perfect imitation of my dog. It went on for hours, barking, whimpering, the sounds Maggie made when she wanted attention, wanted to come inside, wanted dinner. I kept the door locked. The next morning, there was something at the edge of the creek. A shape, standing just at the waterline on the far side, not quite hidden in the trees. It looked like a person, my height, my build, wearing clothes similar to mine. I watched from the cabin window with binoculars. The figure stood perfectly still, facing my direction. As I watched, it raised one hand and waved, my own gesture, the casual wave I'd given to a passing hiker the week before. It was learning me, using Maggie, using whatever it had observed during the brief time I'd been on its side of the creek. I called the number on my grandfather's will, the lawyer. "Mr. Patterson, this is very irregular. Did my grandfather leave any other instructions?" Silence. Then, he left a secondary document, instructions in case of breach. He read from the document, "If anything crosses from the eastern property, do not acknowledge it. Do not interact with it. Do not let it inside structures. It cannot cross running water on its own, but it can use things that have crossed. Animals, people, objects. It will try to trick you into letting it across. It will imitate voices, shapes, behaviors. It is very patient. It will try for days, weeks, months. Eventually, if you give it no opportunities, it will return to its own side and wait for the next breach." Permission? Apparently, your grandfather's notes indicate it's bound by certain rules. It can't cross running water without a vessel, something living that can carry it across, and it can't enter a human dwelling without invitation. Your grandfather's notes say the longest he dealt with an incident was 43 days. 43 days. The figure stood at the creek for 5 days straight, day and night, never moving, just watching the cabin. Sometimes it looked like me. Sometimes it looked like Maggie. Once, it looked like my grandfather, a perfect recreation of him at age 70, the last time I'd seen him alive. On day 6, it started talking, my voice, calling from across the creek. "Austin, I need help. I'm hurt." I stayed inside, didn't respond, didn't acknowledge. "Austin, it's cold out here. Let me come back, let me in, it's me." Maggie started barking at the door, agitated. She wanted to respond, wanted to go to the voice that sounded like her owner. I kept her inside. On day 8, the voice changed, my mother's voice calling from the trees. "Austin, honey, where are you? I've been looking everywhere. My mother lived in Florida. She'd never been to this property." The thing was pulling from my memories now, using voices I'd heard, people I'd loved. It cycled through everyone, my father, my sister, friends from college, ex-girlfriends, each voice perfect, each calling to me, asking why I wouldn't respond, begging me to acknowledge them, to let them cross. On day 12, it tried a different approach. Maggie's voice again, but this time from my side of the creek, inside the property line. I looked out. Maggie was standing at the edge of the clearing, staring at the cabin. But Maggie was inside with me, asleep on the couch. There were 2 Maggies, one safe inside, one standing outside, tail wagging, waiting to be let in. The outside Maggie approached the door, sat down, whined. I checked the couch. Real Maggie was still there, sleeping, her chest rising and falling with breath. The fake Maggie scratched at the door. I didn't open it. It sat there for 3 hours, whining, scratching, perfectly imitating my dog's behavior. Then, as the sun set, it stood up, walked back toward the tree line, and dissolved into shadows. On day 15, I found objects at the doorstep, things from my past. My grandfather's pocket watch, which should have been in my apartment in Boston. My college diploma, a photograph from my childhood. The thing was reaching into my memories, pulling out objects, making them real enough to leave at my door. I didn't touch them. By morning, they were gone. On day 20, the attacks got worse. Every night, something tried to get into the cabin, not the shadow thing that stayed across the creek, but animals. Deer, raccoons, even a bear. All acting wrong, all trying to open doors, break windows, forcing me to reinforce the cabin with boards and nails. They all had the same look in their eyes. Empty, controlled. The thing was learning to use local wildlife, sending them across the creek as vessels, trying to create an opening. I shot a deer that tried to break through a window. When I examined the body the next morning, there was nothing physically wrong with it, but its eyes were wrong, too aware, too focused, like something intelligent was looking out through them. On day 31, I woke up to find myself standing at the creek's edge. I had no memory of walking there. Last thing I remembered was going to sleep in the cabin. But now I was outside, barefoot in the cold morning air, standing at the exact spot where I'd crossed a month earlier. And on the other side of the creek, the shadow thing stood watching me. It had almost worked. It had pulled me from sleep, drawn me to the boundary, tried to make me cross back to its side. I ran back to the cabin and didn't sleep outside my locked bedroom for the rest of the siege. On day 43, everything stopped. The voices stopped calling. The animals stopped attacking. The figure disappeared from the creek's edge. The forest went back to normal. Birds singing, insects buzzing, the ordinary sounds of life. Maggie finally relaxed, stopped whining, started acting like herself again. I waited 3 more days to be sure, then ventured out, walked the property line along the creek. Saw no signs of the thing, no shadows that moved wrong, no sense of being watched. It was gone, back to whatever place it lived, waiting for the next person to cross the creek and give it another opportunity. That was 3 months ago. I still live on my grandfather's property. I've reinforced the cabin, cleared the brush near the creek so I can see the far side clearly, installed motion sensor cameras pointed at the boundary. I've never crossed again, never will. But sometimes, late at night, I hear something moving on the other side. Footsteps in the leaves, branches breaking, the sound of something large, something patient pacing the far bank. And sometimes I find objects at the creek's edge. Things I've lost recently. Things I've thrown away. Once a photograph I deleted from my phone, printed out, wet, left on a rock in the middle of the creek like an offering. It's still there, still watching. Still learning. My grandfather kept the line for 40 years. Now it's my turn. And in 40 years, I'll pass this property to someone I trust, and I'll leave them the same warning. Don't cross the creek. Don't let anything else cross it. And if something comes back across from the other side, don't let it in. Because what's on the other side isn't an animal, isn't a spirit, isn't anything that has a name. It's just hunger and patience and the ability to wear whatever shape will make you open the door. My grandfather understood that. He lived with it, respected it, kept the boundary for 40 years without breaking. I understand it now too, and I'll never ever cross that creek again, even if I hear my own voice calling from the other side, begging me to come home. Especially then. Because if I hear my own voice calling from across the creek, it means the thing has already won, and I'm already over there, And what's calling from my side of the boundary isn't me anymore. It's just another shadow wearing my shape, waiting for